Hey guys, it's Marco again. The only spec that I didn't cover was the tank spec. I decided that I need to do at least 3 raids before I can talk about it, and in this video I'll go over one of those raids. I played 1 raid with my guild and 2 with pugs. Guild raid was a complete smash, and I hope that you guys will smash that like button and maybe even subscribe. I had more fun tanking pug raids since the bosses take way more time to kill, and I tried 2 different tank builds. One build was a proper tank build with riposte, and the other build was the normal saber slash build. My tip is that you definitely just play the normal saber slash build if you have an okay raid team. Extra tankiness isn't worth the DPS loss, and extra tankiness isn't from pure stamina, but from parry and dodge percentage, which don't matter too much on the last 2 bosses. So here's my pug run with a super low geared raid team. For the first boss you want to take Shadow Strike as your rune, so you can immediately jump to the boss. He'll just be casting Frostbolts, so don't activate your Blade Dance, it won't help you. Just try to do as much damage as you can, so you have the most aggro. Be careful when the boss stops casting, because then he'll do his bubble attack, which will knock you off the platform. As a small tip, boss will always rotate clockwise, so to dodge the ability, just go counterclockwise. And as always, if you get the debuff, jump off the platform so you don't knock other players off. I got the debuff here, but I should have just committed to the boss since he was super low and we would kill it without me needing to jump into the water. Now we had a funny fail. One player had to go AFK, our raid leader left the raid, and the hunter pulled the boss. At this moment I thought that the leader trolled us by locking us for 1 boss and leaving, but he somehow managed to leave the raid by accident. It took our new raid leader more than a minute to invite the warlock back into the raid, so he got booted out of the instance and we had to wait 20 minutes for him to come back. After quite a bit of downtime we managed to pull this boss. I wanted the paladin to tank first since he had a lot of aggro issues, but we weren't on the same page. You want to pull the big turtle to the middle of the room and just DPS it. Be careful on this boss since she does a lot of damage and reduces your armor fully. That's why I will use Blade Dance at start, and I will keep a close eye on my health so I can use evasion if needed. I haven't received a heal in 10 seconds, so I decided to pop evasion just to be safe. Paladin couldn't take my aggro, so I had to vanish to reset my armor debuff, and as soon as it was gone, I retaunted the boss. Boss itself doesn't do a lot of damage when you don't have the exposed armor, so he's gonna do like 100 damage per bite. The most dangerous time of this fight is when he casts the shield break, because a lot of people will be on low amount of HP, some players actually died, and then you're gonna be in kind of a trouble, especially if you have the stats. That's why when your health is stable, just focus on doing DPS, you don't even need to use your Blade Dance. And I usually use my Blade Dance when his exposed armor ends, so when he grows a shell I'm gonna use my Blade Dance so I reduce the amount of damage taken. When the boss starts casting the spell, move away so you don't get knocked away, and now I used this small break to remove the armor debuff thanks to the hunter pet. Third boss is super easy. If you have 2 tanks, make sure that one with lower damage tanks the elite. But you can definitely solo tank this, as I showed at the start of the video, with putting 3 stacks of Saber Slash to the elite and then focusing the boss. Elite won't be any trouble as long as you freeze him, You can also pad a bit of DPS by maintaining 3 stacks of Saber Slash on both of the targets. But the main boss isn't really tankable, so just make sure to DPS her as much as possible. Fourth boss is super easy for tanks, since you don't have to do anything except hold the aggro and dodge the murlocs in the intermission phase. Boss has a stacking shadow damage increase, which will be reset when you face him to the intermission, which happens every 20, 30 or 40 seconds depending on your group DPS. That's why I approach this fight as you are just DPSing it. I barely reached 3 stacks and we're already phasing it into the intermission, and my stacks are just gonna drop. Fifth boss is by far the hardest boss for rogue tanks, especially if you're solo tanking, which I did with my guild. We have a lot of trouble tanking multiple mobs, since it's hard for rogues to swap targets due to comma points and energy regeneration. Ideally focus the elite and kick the heal with kick macro so you don't lose comma points. When murlocs come in, try to tag them and taunt them if needed so they keep hitting you. One multi-shot from a hunter will take your aggro, so it's really hectic to tank this. But since pugs usually 2-tank this, you're just gonna take the elite and the other tank is gonna take the murlocs. And of course, if you see that some murlocs are running amok, just use your saber slash and taunt to make them hit you and not your healer. And as soon as the elite dies, you're free to do whatever you want, and you can easily help with the murloc tanking as well. When the boss comes, your torture is over, there will be no more murloc spawning. Now you just DPS the boss and swap to the lightning shield totem. If you're skipping Molten Totem, make sure that you kite the boss around the room a bit and don't expose your back to him. If he gets a lucky Wind Fury proc while he's on your back, it will hurt. As you can see, the boss became super sketchy in almost an instant, since he had like 2 Windfury procs, one after another. I tried to press my evasion, but unluckily it was still on cooldown, and that's the benefit of combat runes. I would already have my evasion back if I was going with the combat route, but I went with the DPS route. So in these moments, ideally you're gonna have your off tank who's gonna tank off you, and the healers are gonna top you. As a tank you also need to swap to the lightning shield totem, otherwise you're gonna get like completely destroyed. And again, when you see that the Molten Fury totem dropped, you just need to kite away the boss. I was a bit greedy during this whole fight, since I didn't use any of my blade dances. I was mainly focused on doing as much damage as I can. We wiped a few times on Kelris, and this was our last pull. We mostly had lack of DPS and lack of dispels in the enrage phase, and nobody had shadow protection potions or free action potions. For Kelris, you will be on the kicking duty together with another player. Just make sure to kick chains near the end of the cast and have energy for it. And I recommend that you go into the first portals like I did here, so you can constantly interrupt the boss after that moment, since it's very nasty if both of the interrupters go inside of the shadowy realm. That's basically it. You don't pop your blade dance, since the boss will barely hit you with basic attacks, just pure DPS. For the last phase you will ideally chug a free action potion and rely on your healers to top you. If you're about to die to Mind Blast, you can vanish it near the end of the cast to drop aggro and survive. And there we go, the last phase begins. The tactic here was that the paladin takes the boss and that I can vanish to do Garrote, so we do maximum damage, let's say, because we had issues with the DPS in the previous tries. So basically here I was just playing as a DPS and not really as a tank, because this group really lacked a lot of damage. And then, since I saw that our tank is about to die, I popped a taunt, so the boss focuses me, since I have the most HP in the raid group. And heroically I died at the end of the fight, and luckily we at least killed it. Last boss is the most fun one, especially if you're solo tanking it. You'll need someone to taunt the boss in the last phase if your DPS isn't super good, and maybe even in the first phase so you can cleanse yourself. In this pug group we decided that the paladin will mostly tank the first phase, and that's why I was asked not to DPS for the first few seconds, since I was generating way too much aggro. As you can see on the threat meter, our paladin still had a lot of trouble maintaining his aggro on the boss, since he was third at the moment. So our paladin DPS kept getting hit by the boss. And then after some time I started to pull aggro as well, so I also got some of the poison stacks. For the last phase, Pally was supposed to tank it until he dies. I was just going to take aggro from him with evasion and then vanish so we prolong his life. Ideally, I should have tanked up until 3 stacks of the debuff, and then when Paladin dies, Druid will take over with his taunt. Raid leader didn't want me to main tank, since Paladin can bubble and I dish out the most damage in the group. So I was just being an off tank really. There we go, I pulled the aggro, now I'm just gonna do the evasion and just continue DPSing the boss. Here Paladin actually re-taunted the boss back, so I had to taunt it right back after. And I'm just gonna do vanish whenever I'm done tanking the boss. I got 2 stacks, my evasion was done, so I decided to play it safe and do vanish, so the Paladin continues tanking the boss. Our brave Paladin is about to die. I try to taunt off him, so he at least gets a bit more life. And then now the druid should take his place, but I almost died from one hit, and then the druid did his job and we downed the boss without me having to die. And that's it for the raid. If you want to see how I tanked with Riposte and Blade Dance 100% uptime, let me know down in the comments. My next video should be the tanking guide. Thank you for watching and bye bye.